And at a point in time, when you've reached success, you're going to find happiness. And how often do you see that happening, right? We all go through life and, you can see some of the most successful people out there swimming in money, recognized like, stars, and miserable.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the School of Greatness podcast. We've got Mo Gawdat in the house. Good to see you, my man. My fellow handball player, which I just found out he did handball in Egypt, was on the Egyptian national team or in the pool for a little bit. And you've got a book out called Solve for Happy, which is Engineer Your Path to Joy. And I'm very excited about this. We'll make sure you guys check it out. And you are solving happiness from an engineering standpoint, right? Not from like a spiritual yoga standpoint, but more kind of like a hacking happiness is what my understanding, right?
I don't use the word hacking. I actually don't use any of the brands at all. So no meditation, no soul, no spirit, no body, no mindfulness. I try not to use those brands, if you want, because in an interesting way, I feel that they've become a tiny bit diluted, maybe a lot, as a matter of fact. I think we take something like mindfulness and we try to brand it in the modern way. To try and tell people, okay, here is something that you can cut and, fit within a specific, view and do it every time. It's much deeper than that and it's much bigger than that. So this is a logical view of happiness, if you want, and, a methodology that is repeatable and scalable like an engineering model that resulted not, of course, it borrowed from a lot of the ancient, studies of happiness of the, from the spirituality and sometimes from religions and so on. It doesn't associate with them, but it borrowed a lot more from an engineering methodology to things, a proper definition of a problem statement, a proper algorithm and an equation for what you're trying to solve for. And then from that, you can, if you have an equation for happiness, you can start to see what's wrong. Why is the
what's missing in the equation?
Absolutely, right? And so a very, very deliberate analytical approach to the problem.
I like it. Yeah, because there's lots of books out there on happiness, right?
Absolutely.
That have, kind of taken over the world by storm, because I think so many people are suffering. So many people aren't fulfilled in their lives and in their work and in their relationships and their health and all these different areas, right?
Absolutely.
And why did you want to start on this journey? What was it in for you? Were you suffering? Did you go through some type of experience?
I mean, who doesn't? I say I'm one of the modern day warriors, like you and I, the people that go through the modern world and try to succeed, and they start to acquire things and get to a certain position or status in life and so on. And in my early years, even though I'm Egyptian and educated in public schools and public universities in Egypt, I must be the luckiest person you will ever meet. Somehow fortune always blessed me, and at a very young age I was given so much. I mean, I was given almost everything that we always work a lifetime for. Money, cars, toys. I had an amazing family, a wonderful wife, 2 incredible kids, and the more I was given, the more unhappy I became. Which was
the more you're given, the more unhappy you became.
Absolutely. So you could.
Why?
Yeah, exactly. And you really need to start asking yourself that, right? There is a point in time where you go through life and say, when I get this, or when I achieve that, or I'm recognized as this, I will be happy. Right? And isn't this the promise we've always been given, right? I don't know about your mother, but my mother always told me, hey, work hard for a few years and then, study hard for a few more, and then, you will reach success. And at a point in time, when you've reached success, you're going to find happiness. And how often do you see that happening, right? We all go through life and, you can see some of the most successful people out there swimming in money, recognized like, stars, and miserable, right? And so, in a very interesting way, I realized that as an engineer, to me, that meant that, this machine was doing well, right? This machine came out of the box and it worked well and it was happy. And then the more it engaged into the real world, the more it became unhappy. Something broke, almost as if either parts of the machine were not working anymore, or maybe maybe it's not in a proper environment anymore. Like, a sports car. I'm not a sports car by any means, but imagine if I'm a sports car and I'm off road in the desert, I will get stuck, right? And so when you realize that, you say, okay, so as an engineer, you would say, let me unassemble this machine, see what went wrong, okay? Let me understand which parts of this machine are not fit for the new environment, or what part of the new environment is drowning those parts of the machine, and put it back together in a way that works.
Sure. Wow. So you work at something called Google X, and what is that?
X is the, if you want, the innovation factory of Google. So, of course, innovation happens everywhere in Google, but X is very well known for things that are outside the core, part of Google. So things like self-driving cars or Project Loon that, is aiming to connect the whole world through an internet network of balloons and so on.
Wow.
And it's different. I told you I was lucky. So, I ran the business side of that for the last 3.5 years, and I'm now actually on sabbatical.
So you're not there right now.
I got the exceptional approval because Google is an incredible place to take a 6-month sabbatical to focus on this mission.
Amazing.
So what we do in Google X is we launch what we call moonshots. Moonshots are attempts at solving major problems in the world in a very unconventional way, right? So we're aiming not to have an incremental impact on the internet through Project Loon, but to completely revamp or reinvent the internet so that there is coverage everywhere there is air, right? That's a very different approach. It's almost looking at the internet as a human right, okay? And those moonshots, they require that you do things very differently. And so when I spoke to Astro, our CEO, and Sergey and others in the organization, I basically said, so I have a personal moonshot. And my personal moonshot is I have this repeatable model that I think would help the modern world find happiness. And happiness is an epidemic. Billions of people are, even though I think humanity is at one of its best eras ever, billions of people are unhappy. So I'm focusing for 6 months entirely on trying to make 10 million people happy.
Who are the people that are the most unhappy in the world?
I tend to believe the thinkers. The more we think beyond the truth of life, the more unhappy we become. Surprisingly, it's, most of the people that you will meet in your life here in LA have an okay life. I mean,
very good life.
I'm sorry to say that.
Beverly Hills.
You were just telling me about your trip to Ghana. I mean, this is what, if you want to know how bad life can be. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just go and take a look. As Louis C.K. on one of his stand-ups, he basically says, sometimes we don't have problems, so we invent stuff to be upset about, right?
Right.
And he goes like, there are parts of the world where our problem today is they're going to chop all our heads off, right? That's a real problem, right? It's not as bad as having to choose a language on the ATM machine, or that it's raining a little too much today in New York.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's and so we look at life in very interesting ways. We think about life in a way, in my view, that causes a lot of suffering. And that's actually the core of my model, right?
Yeah.
The core of my model is that if you really understand happiness, if you let me take a step back. So when I was searching for happiness, I was very unhappy, even though I was successful. And then as an engineer, I realized that, okay, I would never find what I'm looking for unless I define it properly. Right?
What happiness is.
What happiness is. And
what's the equation to happiness, right? Yeah.
And you'll be surprised.
Most people don't know what it is for them.
Absolutely.
And they keep searching and searching, but they're not sure. They think maybe this will be it, this will be it, this will be it. But then it's like, oh, I got that and I'm still not happy.
Exactly.
Still not enough.
Exactly.
Still not enough.
And so if you don't know what it is, how do you expect to find it? Right? Is your happiness the next iPhone, or is your happiness, a nice trip to, with your partner? But you get that, and once you get it, it's almost as if the goal has moved a little further. It's like, okay, let me find the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, right? And so I went reading for a while. I went on reading for a while. I couldn't find a common definition. We all know happiness is that wonderful feeling, like, I'm okay with this. I want to keep this, right?
Yeah.
But what triggers that happiness? And so I found a million definitions. Some people will say, when you meditate, you're happy. When my daughter smiles, I'm happy. When I'm having a good cup of coffee, I'm happy, right? It doesn't really matter what it is. There needs to be an algorithm. And so I did what an engineer would do. I started to capture as many arbitrary data points as I could of instances when I felt happy. I asked people around me what instances made them happy. And I plotted that on a chart, and I tried to find a line, an equation, to fit a line that basically describes what happiness is.
Right.
And my discovery was very straightforward, that you feel happy when the events of your life seem to be meeting your expectations of how life should behave. Okay? Regardless of what your expectations are, how realistic or unrealistic they are, regardless of how generous or harsh, the events in your life are. If the events of your life meet your expectations, you're happy. If the events of your life miss your expectations, you're unhappy. It's as simple as that, right? Now,
so have very low expectations.
That's, of course, all achievers will come up and say,
right?
Absolutely, I found the answer, right? If I have low expectations, I'm happy. And I'm sorry to disappoint you. Yes, this will work.
It's true. When I go to, we were just in Guatemala a couple of weeks ago building schools as well. But when I'm in Ghana or Guatemala and the people that literally have nothing, they're living on the dirt with a little roof, hut roof, and no internet, no toys. And it's just like they have friends and they have the outdoor space to run around in. They're happy.
Absolutely.
They're not expecting something crazy to happen.
Absolutely.
They don't get a lot of money and then it's taken from them. They're just happy with what they have.
They don't want the iPhone 7. And,
no, they don't need it.
They don't care that much.
They don't have shoes. They're just like, there's a swimming pool. There's this.
And of course, they're also blessed with the concept of gratitude. So if you give them a bowl of rice, they're like, whoa, that's amazing. Even if the waiter is a tiny bit late, right?
Exactly.
That's fine. They don't think through that. But I also am a businessman, right? As I say, I'm a modern day warrior who believes very strongly that we are all here for a reason, right? So we're supposed to be here to make a difference to the world, right? If you have low expectations, yes, I guarantee you will be happy, okay? But you will be mediocre in life. Right,
you won't create much.
You won't achieve that mission that you're here for. There is something that you're supposed to deliver to humanity or to being in general, right? And so I say, set realistic, even stretching expectations. Okay, but the trick is, how do you behave when those expectations are missed? And that really is where the whole suffering cycle begins. So I wanted to come here, and visit you, and so that's a 6 hours flight. That's my expectation, right? I was in New York, all right? If I'm an hour late on the runway, how do I react to that? Okay, should I set my expectations as I walk to the airport that is going to be 10 hours so that when I get there and in 6 I'm happy? No, I want it to be 6. But what happens is when our expectations are missed, a cycle of what I call incessant thinking, brain chatter happens in your head, okay? That basically starts to make you feel lousy about life, yet has no impact on the real world whatsoever, okay? So you would sit there in the aeroplane, maybe waiting on the runway and saying, oh my God, I'm never gonna fly Delta again. Flying is just killing me. It's never gonna work for me. Oh, I should have chosen another time. Oh, what will happen if I get there and, I don't find taxis because it's too late.
Right.
Or, I planned for 6 hours. Now it's going to be 7. I'm going to feel hungry. I don't know, whatever weird crap that comes into our heads, right? And that goes over and over in our heads and has no impact whatsoever on the real world other than making you suffer. How smart is that?
Not smart at all.
Right? So it's not. So the issue is not how you set your expectations. The issue is how we handle missed expectations through life. That's one thing. The other thing is, I'm sorry to say, but often we are 20 minutes late taking off, and often we end up landing on time. Right?
Right.
So the reality is, you're setting your expectations in a way that is realistic, but you're also not looking at the event in reality as it is. And this is where all of the unhappiness starts to come in.
So when did you start this journey of like wanting to find the equation?
I think it was 2001. I was a day trader at the time. The market was collapsing. I was making a ton of money. And, on top of my normal job as a director in a big consumer goods company, and everything was fine. And somehow I was, every day that passed, I was unhappier. And, and so being a Middle Eastern, therapy is not an option. Right? We're macho men,
yes.
we have no issues, right? And so I had to secretively start to read myself out of the problem. I read everything I could get my hands on. I mean, I had that habit my whole life where, how we go to the gym an hour a day? I also went to the, brain gym an hour a day. So the first thing I did every day of my life was
reading.
It was reading, right?
Wow.
And so I read, incessantly, if you want, about the topic of happiness. I read almost for 9 years on nothing else. I stopped reading on economics and finance and business and leadership and all of the stuff that makes us succeed in the world, simply because, hey, it doesn't seem that success in the world is leading me to where I need to be. Okay?
Right.
I think what happened was I was being trained, if you want. So for around 2009, I became a lot more okay with life. I'm a Middle Eastern. Post 9/11, I came to the US once a month for many, many years. And so it would, from Dubai to here, it would take 12, 14 hours, and then 4 more hours in Homeland Security with a silly smile on my face. Nothing could dent my happiness. Okay, I was okay. And it seemed, you win a deal, you lose a deal,
right.
your car gets scratched, your whatever spouse is a little upset today, ups and downs of life, and I would have that weird smile, like nothing good. I somehow found a way to just go through with a repeatable model that gets me back to happiness. And then, of course, in 2014, as I share in the book, it was the ultimate test, if you want. So of the biggest gifts I've ever been given was my wonderful son, Ali. Ali was not the usual child at all. He rarely ever cried. He rarely ever frowned. I actually don't recall Ali ever frowning in my face, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a really... I remember vividly the one time we really disagreed and argued was when he was making a choice on university, where, that one argument, 2.5 minutes later, I went back and apologized. He was that sweet. He was so honest, so wise that, by age 18, I started to go to him all the time and ask for his advice. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, not my bosses, not my friends anymore. I recall vividly that I went to one of my friends at the time and I said, when I grow up, I want to be like Ali. He was that wise. And Ali was my friend. We played video games together. We played music together. He was super funny. So, we joked a lot together, watched a lot of comedy together, had all the best of a relationship, if you want. And Ali was a student in Northeastern University in 2014, came to visit us in Dubai in July, and unexpected actually. So he just picked up the phone a couple of weeks earlier and said, "Hey guys, I really, really feel like I want to see you." Unfortunately, as life sometimes doesn't go the way you want it to, Ali was had an acute belly pain and was diagnosed with an appendectomy, which truly is the simplest operation on the face of planet Earth.
Appendix?
Appendix inflammation. And so they basically put in an endoscopy and then blow a little bit of CO2 and then cut it and just take it out. It's literally a few minutes operation. Unfortunately, the surgeon punctured his main blood vessel and exploded it with the CO2 that they and then they made 5 mistakes in a row where a few hours later Ali was no longer with us. And as you can imagine, you would have every reason on earth to literally collapse. I mean, no one would have blamed me if I closed my door and cried for the rest of my life and decayed. No one would say that's wrong. If you knew him, you would understand. But somehow we were okay. Somehow, I wouldn't say we were happy. Don't get me wrong. There is a tremendous pain that comes with the loss of a child. I wish that for nobody. I don't even wish it for my enemies, to be honest. I don't have enemies, and I'm luckily. But it is so painful, and it lasts. Yet, while the pain was there was no suffering, and there is a difference between them. So we were not angry at the world. We were not blaming ourselves for taking him to that hospital. We were not, wondering if life will end, if we should shoot the doctor. We were peaceful and calm, which, by the way, truly is the definition of happiness. Just that peace and calm of, I'm okay with life as it is. Okay. And so when my friends started to come over and see, to his memorial had more than 1,000 people show up, and they would come in crying. We would hug them. We would tell them our view of life and death, and we would tell them our view of happiness and what can be done in this situation. And they would smile and walk around laughing, telling stories of Ali. If you didn't know what was going on, you would show up and think that it was his birthday or something, right? And so every one of my friends told me, you should write that down. That's something that you absolutely should share. He, surprisingly, even though it was a total surprise for us to lose him, I think he knew he was going.
Really?
Yeah, there were so many signs. He spoke to every one of his friends for like 6 weeks before about what happens to us when we die. And, he started to talk to his sister about so many things related to death. But the one thing that really stuck with me very strongly was that literally 2 days before he left, we went out for lunch, the whole family. And Ali sat there, and he didn't talk much in general. And, for that time, he spoke extensively.
Really?
For maybe 40 minutes. He would look at each of us for 10 minutes, tell us how much he loved us, how much he appreciated having us in his life, how much, impact we had on his life.
Wow.
He made us feel amazing. And then he would look at each of us and say, I know this sounds weird coming from your son and all, but and unsolicited, but there is one thing I want you to do. And from me, he said, well, I'm very proud of all that you're doing, to make the world a better place. And Google does make the world a better place. But I want you to rely on your heart a little more. Don't ever stop working, but try to work on things that have more heart in them. And so it seemed to be a perfect fit. When he left, when all of that happened, I sat down, I started to write non-stop, Louis, non-stop. 4.5 months, I couldn't stop. And sometimes I felt that I wasn't the one writing, to be honest, and until this came out. So this is for him, really. The whole journey, I think, is for him.
Amazing. Wow. What do you think is the biggest lesson your son taught you?
I'm a TED Talk kind of guy, right? I dream of changing the world in a like a laptop for every child, or we're gonna end hunger, or we're gonna end poverty. That was the way I thought about it. And Ali was almost he wanted to change the world. He always told me, look, Papa, I appreciate how passionate you are, but you can only change your little world. And sometimes your little world could be one person, right? And if you change that one person, then the universe somehow will expand your responsibility. So they become 2. And if you do well, then they'll become 7. And if you do well, they'll become 1,000 and maybe 10 million, right? And to me, that completely flipped my approach to life. Completely. It was no longer, the big slideware approach to changing the world, if you ask me. Yeah. It was his way. His way was anything that will ever cross my path will get my absolute passion, absolute presence, absolute attention, and the best that I can do, the best I can contribute. And with that, he was so loved. He actually made so much difference as a young man that he was, just by making sure that every instance, every single person that crossed his path got the best he could give.
Wow. How did he become so wise?
How do we sometimes become so unwise, I think, is the question. I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I think we're born with a default setting that is fit for the world, and then we grow out of it, is what happens. Okay, and Ali had a few experiences as a young child that made him not grow out of his nature, if you want. You know, he didn't associate very much with the concept of ego, of being accepted for something that he's not, for pretending to fit in. And you know, when you stay true to your nature, I think we all have inside us a lot more than what we actually use.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did the equation, the test, the greatest test you had a few years ago, do you feel like you were able to use the equation?
So it's much more than the equation. Of course, you can apply the equation here and say events of life and expectations, right? Ali dies. Does that mean life has missed my expectations? And I know this will sound harsh, but you know what? You will die. And I will die. And everyone who's watching this will die. And it's not a defect in the game. It's the way the game is played, right? Some of us will say, yeah, but I'm not ready to die yet, okay? And some of us may be ready. Some of us, you know, if you're a video gamer like I am, you'd understand that if you're done with the level objective, if you collected the tools and the coins that you need, you might as well move on.
Yeah.
Right? And so is Ali's death unexpected? Unfortunately not. I picked up the phone when Ali left, and I called my brother, who's a very famous surgeon, and I said, Khalid, is this possible? Is this even, does this even happen? And he says, well, yeah, it's a very, very tiny probability, but because we do hundreds of millions of those operations every year, it does happen. It happens not in the tens, not in the thousands, but in the tens of thousands of deaths a year. If medical malpractice is the third largest reason for death in the United States.
Oh my goodness.
We just, and in countries like Ghana or India or, other places where malpractice litigation is not that, widely applied, it's even worse. So does Ali's death miss expectations? No, it's harsh. It is very, very, very painful, right? But it doesn't miss expectations. Now, this should take us into, so the equation holds true. Now, you need to understand the difference between, what really helped me is to understand the difference between the pain and suffering. There are two human conditions. There is a condition that is, either physical or emotional pain that's actually useful. That is, and even if not useful, it's unavoidable. You cut your finger, okay? You will feel the pain, you will take your hand away, and the pain will continue for a day or two because your brain is saying, don't hit anything with this. Don't put it under cold water or hot water or whatever. Just protect it, right? And even though you hate that feeling, it's so useful to keep you alive,
right.
Okay? Emotional pain is the same, right? Emotional pain is, if we're talking now and I say something rude to you, I get the emotional pain of like, whoops, I feel bad about this, and I say I'm sorry. It's good. It's not too bad, right? Suffering, on the other hand, is when we take that emotional pain, is when we take the emotional pain and just start to apply it over and over, as if we are generating pain on demand through thoughts in our incessant part of our brain, right? So Ali died. There is nothing I can do to bring him back, okay? But I could adopt the thought of, you shouldn't have driven him to that hospital. You should have driven him to another hospital. You shouldn't have driven him to that hospital. I can say that 14 million times.
Yeah.
Will it bring Ali back?
No.
It won't bring Ali back. Will it make any difference to the world? It won't make any difference to the real world. The only difference it will make is it will torture me.
Yeah.
Now,
You'll suffer.
Now, here is the interesting thing. We've been talking for some time now, and you've instructed your brain to focus on the words I tell you, right? Did your brain say, no, 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 I'm just gonna think about lunch? No, right? Have you ever told your brain to raise your right arm and your brain said, and I don't feel like it today? Right? So the brain says, yes, sir, right arm it is, right arm it is. Your brain will always do what you instruct it to do, other than that one instance of incessant thought where it will say, hey, you know what? I'm the boss. I know what I'm doing. I'm just going to kill us for a while. Why? Right? And I know, it sounds unfeeling almost. No, 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 no. The pain is there. The pain is going to last. But I won't let the suffering happen. So when I start to think about the loss of Ali, instead of saying, okay, let me just torture me for another hour, it's a good time to do that.
Feel bad for myself.
Feel bad for myself and feel like the victim. I say, no, you know what? I'm going to remember all the wonderful times we had together. I'm going to be super grateful for the fact that he came. I had 21 and a half amazing years with that boy, right? I was blessed with one of the best people I've ever met.
Wow.
So I can think about that, right? And more importantly, I reset. I say, okay, you know what, life? It seems that we're restarting a new level here, and Ali is not in it, and there is nothing I can do to put him in it. So can I at least reset that level and do the best I can with it? Would this level be better with 10 million happy people? Would this level be better with 10 million people sending Ali a happy wish and hoping that he's happy wherever he is now? Would this level be better if he's looking down at me and saying, hey, I'm proud of you, Papa.
And you're following your heart.
And you're following your heart.
Wow.
It wouldn't bring him back. It wouldn't take away the pain, but it would make it a tiny bit better. And I think that's really, the deliberate approach to finding happiness.
Yeah, and you're not going to, I'm sure you have thoughts of him, 1,000 times a day, right?
Every hour of every day.
And there's going to be pain in some of those thoughts, but if you just, sit in the pain forever, you're not going to be productive or anything. You're not going to be useful to the world.
Or for him. Or for myself.
Him. Exactly, your family or anything else. So, and what I'm hearing you say is that, the pain may stay around for a long time for people when something bad happens or you're frustrated, you miss expectations, whether it be small or big. But we don't have to sit in it for a long time and suffer. But it may keep coming back, the pain.
Yeah.
But we don't need to sit in the suffering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the reason why we suffer, though, is so interesting. Again, if you think of the machine that has broke, right? What broke in the machine is really interesting. To engage in the modern world, what we do is we learn to navigate certain concepts in an effective way that makes us successful. Mm-hmm. But those concepts are not in any way relevant to what they really are. Okay? I call them illusions. So there are 6 grand illusions of the modern world that we think are something. We apply everything according to our thought of them, and it makes us successful, but it makes us constantly suffer, right? If you start to bust those illusions, see things for what they really are, your happiness equation is going to be solved correctly much more frequently than not.
Right. What are those 6 things?
So six grand illusions. Thought is an illusion. Let me define what an illusion is. An illusion is not something that doesn't exist. It's something that exists in a form that's different than what you think it exists in, right? Okay. So thought is an illusion. In the Western world, we say, I think, therefore I am, while the truth is I am, therefore my brain thinks. Okay, and we can talk about that in detail if you want. Self is an illusion, and the illusion of self is multi-layers, including layers that are so entrenched in us, like the layer of ego, right? That it's not only who I am, but who I appear to be to myself, and then who I want to appear to be to everyone else, and then my profile on LinkedIn and my profile on Facebook, and right? There is all of those layers, masks, if you want, that we wear. But there is also the illusion of what I call entitlement, the illusion of our place in the world. That we somehow think that we are worthy of the attention of the universe. And again, we can talk about that. There is the illusion of knowledge. One of my favorite of all illusions is that we actually think we know. Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. Believe it or not, we actually think we know. Of the entire universe and everything in it, we think that we know. We actually think that what we know is accurate, even though every day of your life, what you knew was revisited.
Right.
Okay. There is the illusion.
What people say is impossible becomes possible.
Absolutely. And you know, and we you know, growing up, I was told that the tiniest subatomic particle is an electron. Come on, like, you know, it's like, are you kidding me? And they insisted when you asked them, no one ever admitted and said, no, the tiniest we could see is an electron. They said, no, it's the tiniest. It doesn't get smaller than that, right? And so many of those. And knowledge, you know, truly is the protector of all illusions, if you want, because the illusion of knowledge is the protector of all illusions, because then you actually tend to believe that the others are true because it's what you know,
right.
Okay? There is the illusion of time, my favorite of all of them. And again, a topic that I've dedicated a ton of time for, because, you know, because you know, with time, we learn to be punctual, we learn to be effective, we learn to be productive, but time isn't. Nobody actually knows what time is. You know, we're measuring something, you know, and when the clock ticks, we respond, but we have no idea what we're dealing with. And if you really know what you're dealing with, the illusion goes away. Right? You know, there is the illusion of control, one of the biggest illusions of the modern day executive like myself and the modern day professionals in general, that we actually think we can control things. I had insurance policies on my life for Ali. I had, you know, his tuition planned years in advance. I even started businesses for him to run when he graduates.
Right.
I didn't plan for that one. How much control do you have? Right? And as I always say, between black swans and butterfly effects, really, there is very little control. Everything you try to control goes out of control. And then there is the illusion of fear. And the illusion of fear is probably one of the biggest ones in the modern world. Fear has the derivatives that hide beneath it, that are, you know, anxiety, worry, and all of the other things.
Stress,
and all of those, where it is a way of life in the modern world. You know, we worry about the future all the time. And that keeps us unhappy. Now, you take those 6 illusions, factor them into your happiness equation. Whichever other inputs you put into the happiness equation, you will get the wrong answer. There is absolutely no way you can get the right answer if you are seeing the world through an exaggerated eye of fear, or through a control freak's eye of, like, I want to have everything under control. The other side of it is what I call the 7 blind spots. So if you look at the events side of the happiness equation, we think that events are missing our expectations. But that's because we don't see events for what they really are, right? Because there were 7 features in our brains that allowed us to live and succeed as cavemen. But those 7 features turned into defects in the modern world. And so when you use them, you don't see the events for what they really are. And you end up in a place where, again, your happiness equation breaks all the time.
That's fascinating.
Oh, I'm happy you like it.
Now, is this all stuff you discovered through just the reading for 10 years or through, and what I also love about this book is you said you did a lot of crowdsourcing where you open sourced it and you let people write their thoughts and their research and their feedback in, you know, online. Did this all, you know, where did all these, you know, 6 illusions come from? Was it just...
So there is, you know, happiness is not a new technology, to be honest. This machine has been, you know, going to maintenance since, you know, the very early civilizations, right? The way it was maintained at the time was slightly different than what we can do today. So, you know, yoga or meditation works. It does work, right? It keeps the machine in a good condition, right? And you can borrow so much of this. But the problem is it's not really always applicable in the modern world. Sometimes we cannot do this, you know, like they used to do in the past. And some of us don't even understand it anymore. We've become so much left-brainers in the world, or at least we glorified the left brain a little more.
Right.
So a lot of it is found in ancient, you know, knowledge of happiness. But I think that the trick is, can you understand it from a point of view of the modern world, of what, you know, can you say it in a language that appeals to people who are browsing Facebook, you know, 12,000 times a day, right? And so what I did, which I think was really, really eye-opening for me, is when I wrote the first version of the book, that was just seen by my agent and my publishers and so on, and then they said, okay, we're just going to edit this through the normal process of editing. And I said, no, let's do it like we do software. Okay. And so I put it online, and I invited 500 early readers to come and literally walk into the document and edit the document online.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Which was an incredible experience. You have no idea. So people would walk in and say, I agree with this. I prefer if you say it that way. And then others on the margin will say, hey, but you're missing a piece of research that shows otherwise. And there would be, conversations that would sometimes be 20, 30, 50 comments long. And so at the end of that process, we ended up almost with a book that was written by the readers, right? And, written in the language of the readers. And so this is why so far...
They can receive it in a way that works for them.
Absolutely. This is why so far it's not like the usual, happiness book that talks, a bit of mysticism and a bit of, very poetic language. It's really very 8-year-old, kind of language. It's,
right.
There are no big words.
Simple.
It's simple.
Yeah, that's why I like it.
Yeah, thank you.
Make it easy for me to read.
Absolutely, and it's to the point. It's not a quick read at all. I mean, most people will say, I go through the first 3 chapters quickly in one sitting. And then I start to realize that even though it's easy to read, every now and then I go like, what did he just say? And then you would have to stop and reflect and then find a little example in yourself. And then mostly, you would do 1 chapter a day and say, I need to sleep on this. Okay. And, I need to reflect on this. And it's really engaging in that way, because it's not, you're doing a bit of the work as you're going through it. So it's, your final model is yours. Right. But it's not the normal, meditate for 10 minutes and you'll be fine.
Right. Well, when you have a moment of pain or suffering, where do you go to? What's your approach to life, to getting back to happiness?
So you have, again, it all goes to understanding. Let's trace it, right? You have an emotion, you feel overwhelmed by an emotion. I'm very sad because of something, right? Many of us don't even recognize it. When you go to your partner and you say, hey, what's wrong? And, she would say, nothing. Right? And then you go like, okay, and, no, but seriously, what's wrong? Right? And, after a while, somehow you start, and by the way, we too, and she comes to me or whatever, and I would say, nothing, it's just fine, right? No problem. But then you recognize an emotion. You can trace that emotion back not to an event, interestingly, but to a thought. So, an Uber driver is, rude to you today, okay? It's not the event that made you unhappy. It's what you thought about the event that made you unhappy. It's, people shouldn't be rude to me. Or, what will this world come to? Or do I really have to depend on this service where I have to be treated poorly or whatever, okay? And that thought, if you trace it, you will find that there are 3 types of thoughts. And that's really the most interesting bit of it. If you want to start to have brain control, like sci-fi brain control, right? You have that thought that is causing you pain is happening here in the midline areas of your brain. It's, it's an incessant thought that is brain chatter that leads to no action whatsoever. But you have 2 other types of thought. You have what I call insightful thinking. This is when I ask you to solve a problem. It's like, okay, driver was rude. What are we going to do about it? Once you have that, what are we going to do about it? You move the thought from the incessant part of your brain to your insightful part of the brain, which is both on the right-hand side, partly in the back where the processing happens, batch processing if you want, and then partly on the front where the verbal conversion happens, okay? Or you actually find an answer and then you start to engage and you start to say, okay, let me do something about it. Let me sit down and write an email to or whatever, right? And when you're experiencing the real world, again, on the right-hand side of your brain are the parts that are engaged. So once you recognize the thought, once you recognize that there is no value to that thought, and you start to move it to either a problem-solving approach or an experiential approach, the suffering goes away. When you're actually writing the email, if you've decided what you want to do, there are no emotions anymore. You're just into the action. When you're solving the problem, you're not overwhelmed anymore. You're just trying to come to something. And so mostly what I do now is whenever I feel there is an overwhelming emotion or a painful, feeling coming to me, I start by asking, Is it true, by the way, brain? Are you presenting me the whole truth? If it is, what can we do about it? Right? If there is something I can do about it, how can I do it? Right? And if there is nothing, by the way, then there is that core, actually one of the most important concepts I present in the book, a concept that I call committed acceptance. Can I accept it? As I said, reset the world as it is now, accept it because I cannot change it, and then design a path forward that makes the world slightly better from where it is now.
I love it, man. This is great. I want to make sure everyone gets this book, Solve for Happy, Engineer Your Path to Joy. Make sure you guys get this right now. You can get it online on Amazon, Google Books, Barnes & Noble. And do you have a website as well?
I do, solveforhappy.com. And one thing that I would like people to do, because I am a businessman, is I have a counter. So I'm counting down from 10 million. If any of what you guys have heard today made you a little happier, go and click on the counter.
At solveforhappy.com.
Yeah, so go to solveforhappy.com. The counter is prominent in there.
What are you at right now? Do you know? Of the time of the recording?
A couple of thousand below. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's 10 million to go.
Yeah. You just started.
But
you just started.
You know what?
Hey.
2,000 happy people. That's amazing.
That's great.
Yeah. Who would want anything more? I mean, 10 million is better, but we're not going to wait there.
Don't have an expectation though.
Exactly. We shouldn't wait. We shouldn't wait until we get there so that we're happy, right?
Exactly.
I'm happy with 2,000.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah. And we're going to hit a lot more once this comes live. So
I hope so. I appreciate that.
Couple final questions for you. How were the pyramids built?
You want my story?
yeah, I do.
Right. Okay.
Because I saw them when I was in Egypt last year.
Yeah.
And I watched all the documentaries and all the theories. And I'm just.
Let's just.
You're from there. I want to know how they're built.
Egyptians are really nice people. Okay. Some weird guy went and said, "Guys, I want you to work for the rest of your life until you die and carry stones." And they said, "Sure." Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. Basically.
That was it.
Yeah. We'll die as long as you're happy, and it was really weird. Yeah. You want the science fiction of it?
No,
I don't know that, but
how did they get them up? They're so heavy.
They
had to have some levers in or some other assistance.
They used
something to push
cylinders or and to push them up. But
all the way up that high.
But you see this. I always present that when I talk about technology. It's like imagine if you went to those people and said, "Hey guys, by the way, I have a new technology, stone in a paper bag." Right? You just mix it with water. Just take it up there, 50 pounds at a time, and then mix it with water there, and everyone will be very, it will work. It will make the same stone. It's called cement. Hallelujah! It's like, we have a new technology.
Sure.
I think we sometimes take those kinds of technologies for granted, but but life has gone a very long way since that time, and somehow we're still not happy.
What about the mummies? They don't know how to recreate that process, right?
There are many mummies around the world, not only in ancient Egypt. Yeah, but this specific process was,
it's lost, right?
It was done with a very specific objective, the very strong belief that we will actually live again, and that we need to preserve certain parts of it, in a certain way, and others in a different way.
Right.
It is fascinating once again when you think about that. 7,000 years ago, and they managed to do that.
Crazy, right?
Not bad. It's
unbelievable.
Equivalent to the internet of today.
I think the ancient Egyptians were the most brilliant of all time.
Current Egyptians are cool too.
They're very cool. The most brilliant, though. Exactly. No, I loved Egypt. It was great. Couple final questions for you. This is a question called the 3 truths that I ask everyone. So if it's the last day for you many years from now, you've impacted 10 million people and beyond to be happier, healthier, but you only have 3 things left to say to the world. You have to write them down on a piece of paper, and this is your message to the world. And this is all people remember you by, in written form, are your 3 truths. What would you say are yours?
I think the number 1 is to say that we are here for a reason. We need to find that reason. Number 2 is to say that surprisingly, your purpose to find that reason is to be happy. I have a very interesting theory that, if the tuning fork, when you tune your guitar and you hit it and it will always play in the key of E or whatever. You and I are the same. Each of us has something that is so you, that that is exactly your natural resonance. And the way to find it is to find whatever makes you happiest. Okay. Unfortunately, as we go through the real world, they tell us, hey, by the way, but you can make more money if you study business or if you work in Wall Street. But if it isn't your thing, you can be successful, but it would not be your thing. It would take a lot of effort, and you wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
So I tell people, and I told my kids, and I still tell Aya, my daughter, to absolutely find that resonance. Just write down your happy list, find out whatever it is that makes you happiest. And yeah, I know life is tough and you have to go to work and you have to make ends meet. Fine, do all of that, right? But play the E, find out what it is and live your life's purpose. And yeah, the third is you'll be surprised. If it's my very last day, I will just remind people that death is the opposite of birth. It's not the opposite of life. That if you think of life as a video game, I'll just meet you on the next level. That's what it's going to be all about. So hopefully me and Ali sitting there, having fun.
Absolutely. Let's say there was a direct connection to Ali right now, and he was listening, which I'm sure he is, but you only got to say one thing to him. What would you say?
Profound. Bad words are allowed? Yeah. Damn you, Ali. Left too early, my son. I don't think he left too early. It's just too early for me.
Yeah, of course.
I would have definitely wanted one more hug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll get it again.
I hope so.
Well, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you, Mo, for your courage to do all the work that you're doing after such an experience that you had. I mean, I don't wish that on anyone ever, what you've gone through, and I'm so grateful that you've come through with such love and appreciation and gratitude to give to people, as opposed to go into a cave and suffer. And I think you have an incredible gift to inspire, educate, and teach others how to be happy when something tragic like this happens in their life in their own way. So I acknowledge you for taking this courage and going on a journey and inspiring so many people over these last few years.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, and thank you for helping me spread this word. And the only way I can get there is through the help of you and others.
Of course, man. This is great. It's going to help a lot of people. My final question is, what's your definition of greatness?
It's to live your purpose. So in two words, none of us is dealt the same hand. We're each dealt a very different hand in the world. Some of us come with certain gifts, and some of us come with other gifts, and some of us are tall, and some of us are short, and some of us are, fast, and some of us are slow. And while we have sort of narrowed down the definition of greatness in the modern world to a few amazing examples, it's not that at all. Your version of being great is what you're doing here. Another person's might be to cook the best cookies, to bake the best cookies on earth, and finding that's true greatness.
Well, thank you so much.
It's a welcome.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
Appreciate it.